Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I want to say I hope you enjoyed that movie, but I'm also hoping that you were unsettled by it
Mhm.
and that you are here to engage in an amazing conversation. My name is Kimberly Haven. I am with Reproductive Justice Inside and From Prison Cells to PhD. And I will introduce my friend Topeka so she can tell you who she is.
Good evening, everyone. And I agree with Kimberly in that, yes, it was an incredibly powerful movie. However, very, very unsettling, right? And so, again, I'm Topeka K. Sam, founder and CEO of the Ladies of Hope Ministries, whose epic vision is to end poverty and incarceration of women and girls globally. Excited to be here with you all.
Thanks so much. Topeka, I definitely want to hear from everybody that's watching and is participating in this fireside. If you have questions or comments, please put them in the chat. We'll be watching that and they'll be feeding it to us. But Topeka, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was that prison experience in that movie.
Mhm.
I know for me, I've watched the movie a couple of times, and the first time I watched it I had an agenda to watch it, right? But then I watched it later and it really hit home. Like I saw myself in the commissary line. I saw that food tray. I saw the visiting. How did the movie, and that's what unsettled my spirit, to be perfectly honest. How did the movie resonate with you and your experience?
I would agree. It was the same issues, right? The fact that no matter where you are, anywhere really in the world, any prison that you've gone to, any prison that you've lived in, any prison that you've visited, the experiences will always be re traumatizing and traumatic when you see another sister going through that. And so
Mhm.
for me specifically, there were, excuse me, there were moments of joy, kind of like when the sisters were laughing. She's like, when I get out of here, I'm going to do, and they're like, look, you're happy when you go to commissary, And I laughed because I remember
Yep.
being
Yep.
happy every week because it gave me something to do that at least
Right.
made me feel like I was going out somewhere, although I wasn't just going, a few steps down the little way. But having also had the opportunity to visit that specific prison a few years back, just watching them walk the yard, as
Ugh.
we call it, looking at the different areas within the institution, I felt like I was right there with them again. Um, and so it was very, very powerful. And then talking to the kids or listening to the kids talking
Right.
to their parents and their feelings through it. I remember when my niece came to visit me, and everybody had told her that I was working because before I went to prison, I was division chairperson for Amtrak for New York and DC. So I was always on the road.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't unlikely for, Aunt Topeka to be gone or traveling. And when she came to visit me in prison, unlike the other little girl, she was like, well, why didn't you tell me that you was in prison? A lot of my uncles been to prison. And I was
Oh,
like, oh,
wow.
her mom's brothers and stuff. And so I was like, oh no, we didn't know. And my mom was like, well, Aunt Topeka was embarrassed. She didn't want to tell you. And I was like, no, I wasn't. And my mom was like, well, yes, you were. I know I wasn't. We went back and forth in the visiting room, but it was just to see like the face of the little baby, and how the son was like when she came home.
Yeah.
We haven't been here 2 years, so how should I really feel? How should I feel?
Well,
And building those relationships, how difficult that is.
and let's talk about that because, that little girl Bailey, first of all, and every time I saw her on camera, I wanted to just give her a hug. That was the sweetest little face, right? But I don't know if you saw this, but I saw it a lot where mothers didn't know what to tell their children. And so they said, mommy's at college. Or my other one that I never could wrap my head around was mommy's in the army. So, mommy was there to
Mhm,
fix you cereal in the morning, but then she was in the army by the time you got home from lunch for school.
mhm,
And so again, it was just kind of how we have to manage that. The
mhm.
the phone calls and the woman's son, as you said, after 2 years, he's disconnected.
That's right.
And some of the most powerful things are, how prison resonates with our children.
Yes.
And when when your niece said, all these people in our family have been in prison, it's like,
Right.
when did prison become that normal kind of thing?
Yep.
Um, and how do we deal with the trauma of the children when we come home? it's, we can talk about parenting behind the bars and, really innovative ways. Cause I got to be honest, women are some of the most creative, incredible people on this planet, because we do come up with the ways to create community, to create family, to still mother. But that coming home, and that, how do you parent? How do you, um, how do you step back into your life? Because when you first come home, you are in the, I have to report to parole and probation. I've got to find a job. I've got to get a roof over my head. I've got to get into treatment. I've got to. And then your family's like, here, listen, we've had your kids for 3 years. Now you got to be a mom again.
Yeah.
And, without support. And so one of the people, someone asked if there were, other than programs like Al-Anon and faith-based programs, and some peer-based mentoring, which, again, everything was jacked during COVID.
Hmm.
What do we think is I know the benefit of peer-based mentoring, but I also know that that comes with its own peril, because again, you don't ever disclose something that you don't want to have broadcast all over, the campus. Um, so what do we think about mentoring? What do we think about the idea of there's no linkage, there's no continuity of care, there's no transition? How would that play out in maybe minimizing some of the trauma to the family and specifically to the children?
No, absolutely. I think, continuity of care starts from the day you actually go into prison.
Hmm.
The trauma of the entire process of a person from getting arrested. Well, actually, let's go before then. From any childhood trauma or adult trauma that a woman has faced,
Hmm.
over 90% of all women who have been incarcerated reported have been survivors of sexual trauma, violence, intimate partner violence. 85% are mothers. Uh,
Hmm.
95% have been diagnosed with some type of mental health issue, whether it has been from, simple anxiety or depression to something more severe like schizophrenia.
Hmm.
And so, with all of this data that we all know, and the fact that, the 800% increase, some of the data that we saw in there, but all of us that do this work know.
Right.
When a woman comes in, she's coming in with all that baggage. Then, on top of the arrest, pre-trial, if she was able to get a bail and then being ripped when she has to self-surrender. If she was not if she didn't get a bail like myself, and then, you're arrested and then you no longer see, the world as you had once known it.
Right.
All of that needs to be unpacked. And while there are not many programs that are in prison, as we know, that help. There is the mentors, and I say mentors as your sisters, your,
Hmm.
some people say aunts, grandma,
Right.
mom, right? Even inside
Yeah.
that you meet that become your family. And then when you leave, and then you're looking for that same community that you had once you were in, it's these conditions where they say people with convictions as a stipulation of parole, probation, or supervision cannot communicate with each other. And
Yeah.
so there's those antiquated, outdated hindrances that
Hmm.
then you left your family once, you
Right.
leave your family again incarcerated, and now you have no one to connect to while you're in community. Yet it's those of us that have actually lived the experience are the ones that know exactly what to do in order to help each other move into the next step, whether it's getting their kids back, whether it's finding a safe place to live, whether it's finding a way, employment. How do you even write your resume? How do you explain employment gaps? It's like all these things that people don't necessarily think. How do I get my ID? My social
Right.
security card, all of the things that we take for granted when we can just go in DMV and get these things or get online, right? I don't have a computer.
Right.
I don't know how to use the computer.
Exactly. How
Um,
am I going to eat when I get home?
every
Um, yeah,
right.
it is daunting. And I think the other thing, and I like the fact that you talked about the trauma that somebody comes in and then they bring that trauma that's been exacerbated by the prison experience, and they bring that back to the community. And I want to touch on something that is a pet issue with me, and that is the stigmatizing and the stratification of people who have systems involvement, right? And one of the things that I've been working a lot on is trying to drive the change to person first language.
Mm,
And so when they use the word prisoner, Prisoners line up, prisoners do this. I mean, and after a while that becomes so embedded in our subconscious and in our psyche, and we internalize that, and we get to that where that's the space that we operate from. And
Mhm.
so I'm concerned about the fact that that language is something else that we bring back. And I want to give you a minute to talk about the Ladies of Hope, because I know this is something that you and your incredible team works to dismantle, to unpack, and to rewrite for people and help them rewrite. So, can you talk a little bit about that stigmatization, that language piece that just kind of controls everything that we do? Because that also goes to how we answer questions on a resume, or we apply for an apartment, or we
Mhm.
apply for social services. How do we answer these questions? And it's the language that people
Absolutely.
use with us and that we use with ourselves.
Mhm.
And I know this is something that the Ladies of Hope works on. Can you give us
Sure.
some information about that?
Yeah, so when, just going back when I was inside and, they would say inmate Sam, I would never answer. And it was before people even told me about language. I'm like, I'm not an inmate. I'm a person. And so they would get angry, the officers, because I never responded. And some of the sisters would be like, they're calling you. I said, no, they're not. And they ended up getting to it would be Sam. They wouldn't even say Miss Sam, some of them. They were just like, Sam, come, get your mail, or Sam, whatever. And I took that over I would inmate. But when I came home and I started hearing, some of the work, from Eddie Ellis and others that had done that, far surpassed even my life, right? That they talked about people first language.
Mhm.
Forward.us recently did a campaign on that. Also, I'm on the board of the Marshall Project, and we also put out something around that it is critically important that we're saying people. So I see somebody in the chat like, what is the appropriate terminology that we should be using? So you a person's name, right?
Mhm.
Like we say now, like, what is your identity? What's your gender identity? He, him, I say her, she, like the chocolate. So I always kind of, make, try to make it a little light. But
Right.
really, I'm Topeka. So, I want to be referred to by my name. And I think anyone else, I'll say, my name is Topeka. And yes, I've lived the experience of incarceration. When I talk about women who are inside, I always say my sisters, because you
Right.
want to be able to provide dignity to people. I've heard people say, that they were being called by number so long when someone called their name, they didn't even know they were talking to them.
Yep.
Because you think about being programmed that you're 4299937, which was my number. And I was in federal prison, and for 3 years, that's all I heard. And I come out, if I don't hear somebody saying my name on a regular basis, then I may be just sitting there and someone may think I'm hard of hearing, but no, I just don't realize that you're talking to me.
Right.
And so, I think we say people first language, a person who has been incarcerated, a person who is just in justice involved, a person who has been arrested, that person who is presently incarcerated. Some people like to say formerly incarcerated, previously incarcerated, some people, it which feels right, but what you don't say is, ex-convict
Right.
or ex-felon. I'm like, well, hold on. I had a felony,
Right.
per the law, the way the law is written, and that felony is never X. So, like the language,
Right.
if you even think about grammatically, is completely wrong. Um, but it's like, we just have to make sure we do that. And so at the organization, like I said, we focus on any poverty and incarceration of women and girls. And part of that is we have 7 programs. What we realized was that while advocacy is critical
Mhm.
and important, that we cannot advocate for ourselves or anyone else unless our basic human rights are met,
Right.
which is safe and affordable housing, access to healthy food, and equitable opportunity through job and career and entrepreneurship, and health equity, right?
Right.
If those basic human rights are met, then I can think about policy advocacy and legislation. I can think about how do I speak up for myself and empower myself in these situations that I understand are not helpful for me or my community or that of my children.
Mhm. I think the other thing though too is that I mean, I'm sure your experience was similar, and certainly with the women that you work with, you hear this all the time. that the expectation for women that are incarcerated is so low. I mean, we all know that prisons were not meant for us. The policies were not designed for us. We're afterthoughts. And so, they treat us, our uniforms are like the men, it's everything is just male focused. And when I think about opportunities, I think about lack of opportunities, lack of programming. If you have a faith based program or you are an Al Anon, you could probably get a program. I mean, I know you could get a program, volunteer program inside the Maryland State Prison. Know that for a fact. You want to do education, you want to do job training, financial literacy, you're out of luck. And so the idea of, and we have one college program, we have an amazing college program here in Maryland with Goucher, but the wait list is so long for like 10 spots. And you can never attain that. And we don't talk about education. We don't talk about entrepreneurship while people are inside. We're going through the mindset of you can go get a job as a waitress. You can go get a low level minimum wage paying job. We don't help people explore their full potential. And I think that whether it's education, whether it's some sort of vocational, whether it's, some sort of creative, I met some of the most brilliant, smart, savvy, creative people behind the fence that, given equal opportunity to resources and opportunity, would have just been phenomenal.
That's right.
And yet we beat them back and we beat them down. And when we talk about the number of women, we've been saying for a long time the women's prison population has exploded by 700%. But we know it's closer, if not over 800%. And we fail to recognize the drivers. Women enter prison differently. We do our time differently, and we come home differently. And yet we're just now beginning to have these conversations in pockets. And I'm hoping that now we'll start maybe rising up to the national level a little bit more, but we're just now having these critically long overdue questions about what people can do and how we can change these narratives and how we can support. And, this is a big one with me, me, authentic programs. I have a problem with the people that are there just because there's money on the table, because it's a sexy issue at the moment. It's a sexy conversation and everybody wants to get in on it. They don't want to really do the hard work. And so I want to make sure that we can kind of do some of the questions, but I also, you said that you have 7 programs within Ladies of Hope. I would love for you to be able to tell everybody about the 7 programs, because I think that they are life-changing and amazing. But it also, I think, will go to show how your team continues to maintain those touch points through the different opportunities. So please tell us about your 7 programs.
Well, thank you. Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that, because I could do none of this without my team. I often laugh and say, I started off as the Lady of Hope. And so now, we got who we are. I'm no longer alone in it. But I mentioned earlier, we have 7 programs and how we approach our work and why we approach it that way. So we break our work into 2 pillars. One is direct service and sustainability. The other one is advocacy and engagement. And so we start off with Hope House. And Hope House is our safe housing space for women and girls coming out of any of these systems, right? Whether it is incarceration, poverty, substance misuse, domestic intimate partner violence, sex and human trafficking, any of those, aging out of foster care. We provide a safe place for women to land on their feet. So we do, like, the first 30 days is like a prison detox, we call it. Person gets to come home and chill. There's no pressure. Get your mind right, relax, do your thing. We're integrating like spa treatment, get your nails, hair done, get a facial, get a massage, kind of like clean yourself off of what that experience has been, at least so you can start to feel good about who you are, right? And then connect to additional resources. From there, then we have that in the Bronx, one in New Orleans, Louisiana, and we're scaling that this year to Prince George's County, Maryland, to Miami, Florida, and to Atlanta, Georgia, and Trinidad and Tobago and Colombia. And so through that, that's housing. Then Hope Hub, which is our Now it's our first pilot, which we are doing in simultaneously both Prince George's County and Miami, Florida, is a community-based resource center. Kind of, if you want to think of like a WeWork or a hub, where we're bringing community-based organizations together that have shared and aligned values in order to help women and girls. And so, opposed to me having to go to 5 different areas of the city, not having any money, I know that I can come to this one-stop shop, basically, where not only do I have a community of mentors and sisters that will help me, but also viable resources that's going to get me to the next level. And so, super excited about that. Most of the organizations are led and by people who are directly affected by incarceration, mostly women.
Right.
So super excited about that. Then our next program is our Angel Food Project, which is a partnership that we have with Instacart. And so we give out bags of donations of healthy groceries to families impacted by these systems. And that program is also scaling this year to Maryland and Miami as well. We service now the 5 boroughs in New York and have serviced over 5,000 families last year, and hundreds of families already this year. And as you know, with the pandemic, of course, increase in food insecurity and food waste has happened.
Right.
And so Instacart has been a critical program, and they're helping us to scale that program as well. Then we have our Pathways for Equity program, which is a personal professional development program that's 3 months. And from there, we partner with employer partners in corporate America, 500, Fortune 500 companies for growth focused jobs. So we're not just bringing people in as a waitress, right? Like we have women going into Virgin Orbit to work in aerospace. We're partnering with different industries, the hotel industry, hospitality industry, manufacturing industry, fashion industry, finance and banking industry. So people really have an opportunity. And we're calling on these corporations who talk about DEI, that
Right.
when you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not just people based on, gender, identity, religion, or race. It's also people based on lived experiences. And to your point, Kimberly, that so many of us are so brilliant. I mean, we even heard that the woman who started her restaurant in the club before she went to prison,
Right.
right? Yet that wasn't a caveat enough for her to be able to stay home. And now she's in the prison working in a kitchen again
Right.
for no wages, if at all, or very minimal, to now come home and wanting to start her business again. So where's the loan for that? Where's the
Right.
startup capital for that? How do we help to support her? Because she is an entrepreneur, right? And most people, when you really sit there and talk to them about their experiences and stories, as you mentioned, they need support in that. So that's what that program's about. And then on the advocacy work we do, I'm sorry, health equity work, we had just did our second doula cohort that we're in now. Trained 37 women in the first one. Now it's 20 women in the second one, on being birth workers, doulas for women who are presently incarcerated and women who are in community who can't afford doula services, working with United Healthcare and Optum to make sure that they're able to bill Medicaid in order to get paid for their services. And so really excited about that, because they'll be certified and then also able to go into the medical field in that way. And then on the other end, we have our Faces of Women in Prison program, which is our program where we train women on how to use their voice. One, to heal their trauma. Two, to say no. No is a complete sentence. And often we don't know how to do that, which is why we end up in the situations that we are. And then three, in order to get paid as public speakers.
Right.
We often talk about how our voices are not valued. And women are asked to share the messy parts of their life. And the next thing you've missed a day of work, you had to pay for childcare, you believe so much in what you're talking about that you are willing to sacrifice even sometimes your rent in order to get people to hear from you, and yet you're not getting paid. And that's a career, public speaking.
Right.
People pay thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to do what we're doing right now, right? So it's
Right.
about that. And so today we have 75 women have graduated from that program, and now we're graduating another 5, and we have a cohort of 25 right now that have started. And then our Epic Ambassadors, which you are one of the trainers on as well, trains women on the legislative process.
Right.
What's a bill? How do you draft and write legislation? And that is what that's about. From there, getting women registered as lobbyists in their state, partnering with local lobby firms to get them to be fellows there, and also begin the lobby process and pass bills, writing and drafting bills like you just passed today. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
But really getting paid as lobbyists to do it.
Right.
Right. Like we become legislative advocates and we do all this work. And yet again, we don't get paid. But when you look at the lobby firms and how people are getting thousands of dollars just to be retained, whether it's during session or not,
Hmm.
when we talk about equity, there has to be ways to do that. And
Yeah.
so those are our programs. And we just launched our Epic Inside, where we have a newsletter and we're reaching inside. We're going to be offering all the programs that I mentioned virtually to prisons inside, starting with Las Colinas Prison in California, San Diego, and hoping with look, we're targeting in all the states that we're scaling to right now. So
Right.
obviously, Maryland, we are on the way.
Thank you. I think that it is amazing. And I really wanted our audience to kind of hear all of the work that you and your magnificent team are doing. Because again, I think that it is truly the best program that's there, that actually has all of these different facets to that lead to real empowerment. What we currently have just is a band-aid on a much bigger problem, and it always reverts back to that place of less than. And I
Mhm.
don't mean to minimize the programs. I know that they have good hearts, some of them. But I also know that it always does kind of revert back. And it's not about empowering. It's not about building on. It's not about looking forward.
That's
And I think too about how behavior is modeled. And I think about these little children, that sweet little girl, Bailey. I swear that little face
yeah.
um, just gets me. When I think about that, and I think about if the opportunities, and I think about the investment in,
Mhm.
her mom, had that happened, what is she then able to model for her daughter?
That's right.
And she's modeling an empowered woman. She's modeling a strong woman. She's modeling an amazing woman that this has not, held her back. I did think that it was great when the guy said, you are not a felon, you have a felony conviction. And I will never forget that when when I was in Annapolis several years ago, and we were trying to talk about language, and it was a long day. I was working way too many bills, and somebody said the word inmate, and it was a derogatory thing towards me. And I literally stopped in the hearing and said, I am not an inmate. I am not an ex-con. I am not an ex-felon. When I was in my 20s, I only dated married men and I broke up 3 marriages. It does not say home wrecker on my business card. It does not say ex-felon on my business card. You may call me Miss Kim. And just left it. And I don't know what came over me,
Mm.
but ever since that day, it was language is important. Words matter. And I know that someone put in the chat about how they said families on one side and offenders on the other. And
Mhm.
children hear that. Do you have any programs with that involve that sort of that family reunification, that family restorative justice kind of angle?
Yeah, so we haven't launched this program yet. It's going to be launching in the next few months, and it's called Study Buddies. So what that program is, it's actually led by kids, young people, youth, I should say, who come from really affluent schools and from privilege. And so a lot of the boarding schools, one young lady, her name is Mary Wood. Her mother works for a hedge fund that we partner with, and she brought her over to Hope House just to see what we were doing. And she was like, "Oh my God, I can't imagine, my mom and dad not being able to help me with my homework. I can't imagine that." She's like, "I have to do something."
Wow.
So I was like, "Well, what do you want to do?" So her and her sister went back. They sent me a deck. I was like, "Oh my God, I need to hide this child." She came with the idea of Study Buddies. It was the name that she came up with, everything. And it was,
Oh,
how do they help kids who have incarcerated parents, mothers specifically,
right.
build that relationship while the mother's incarcerated and the child is still in school, and they're helping mentor the kids through high school so that they can get scholarships into college or other activities after that, making sure that they're connecting them to resources that more kids who are in privileged opportunities have access to, like squash and other things that they
Right.
go are free classes, but kids in different communities don't have that access, right? And so it was their idea. So we are launching it. Super excited about that. Partnering with different schools, Department of Education in New York, and they want to be able to scale that, also. So because it's virtual, again, any organization that's listening that actually has access to kids of incarcerated parents, we want to partner because they want to help. These kids are incredible, incredible. Their parents are incredible. And they just want to be able to even, get tablets, make sure that the
Right.
kids can talk to their mom. So they have opportunities to do schoolwork together, that the school is engaged, the guidance counselor and the teachers, because a lot of times the kids fall through the cracks because the teachers don't even know the parent is incarcerated.
Right.
And so they don't know how to communicate and do that. And when you're starting those type of programs while the mother is in prison and the child is home, that builds family reunification. That builds trust, right? And that builds the relationship. So when the mother comes out, she's not really having to think about everything, right?
Yeah.
That she knows that she's built that relationship with the child is feeling confident. The child won't be as embarrassed, right? As Young Bailey even said in the visiting room, right? Because the child knows what's happening, and then
Right.
therefore, so we're really excited to launch that program.
So I know that we're running out of time, and honestly, you and I could talk about this for hours. Next time we have to do this with wine, but one of the things that, and I like the thing with the education, because one of the, I'm a consulting policy lead with From Prison Cells to PhD, and that works with higher education for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals, right? I think it would be great if we could figure out some way within study buddies that while the child is going to school and the child is engaged with this study buddy program, that we're expanding the P2P program in these institutions where mom can go back to school.
Yes.
Mom can get that degree. Mom can get her GED and then think about higher education. I think that would be a great, because we know education is a pathway out of poverty, but it's also a pathway out of prison.
Yes.
I know that we've got literally just a couple of minutes left, so I want to kind of wrap up. Any final thoughts that you would like to offer tonight, Topeka?
Yeah, I mean, just the thoughts are is that, people make mistakes. Sometimes people make choices. Sometimes they're not even mistakes, right? This is a choice that they made in order for what they felt they needed to do,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's through because of illness, because of poverty, because of, whatever type of, again, trauma that they've been through that has been unhealed. Ultimately, when people actually are released from prison, they deserve to have a fair chance,
Right.
right? You've paid your debt to society, you've moved forward, and people really have to have that opportunity. If we want safer communities, it's not just people who've never been to prison that want a safe community, so do people who've been to prison. It's not the fact that, some of us may have to go through an educational program or things. My parents were entrepreneurs. I don't have any degrees, but I've been able to build an organization that has raised millions of dollars. Because of my experience and work experience and entrepreneurship experience, and that somebody invested in me, somebody believed in me. And when you have people that can give another person that hope, that it's critical. I think lastly, I would say, I see that this is heavy Maryland. And so because we are moving into Maryland, Prince George's County specifically, and we are going to be servicing the DMV area, anyone who is on here, please feel free to reach out. We need as many volunteers to help as we launch and build. We went under contract. We're doing due diligence. And so hopefully everything goes well and we'll be able to, go to closing in the next 45 days. So I'm very, very excited about that. We need all of your support. We need to make sure that we're providing additional resources for women, children, and families. And we need you. So Kim, thank you so much for including my voice in the organization in Maryland tonight.
Of course.
And just really, really excited to continue to build community and sisterhood with you and all of your brilliance and working together.
Thank
More
you so much. I'm so glad you were able to join us tonight. And I think that this documentary was really just a springboard to starting a larger conversation. I would encourage anybody who's watching this to reach out to the Ladies of Hope Ministries. The contact information is in the chat. I am at Reproductive Justice Inside, which is a whole other advocacy organization around the reproductive and sexual healthcare and rights and dignity for incarcerated women and girls. And then From Prison Cells to PhD, which is in fact the education program. And Topeka, you and I can talk about, some sort of collaboration with P2P. I think that would be phenomenal. And what a great model. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This has been incredible. I hope that you will stay engaged with both Topeka and I. And I hope that when you lay your head down on the pillow tonight, that you remember the things and the voices and the emotions that you felt while you were watching this movie tonight. And yes, I want you to be unsettled, because then tomorrow I know you're going to reach out to either Topeka or I. With that, I want to say thank you so much for joining us, Topeka, my friend. Much love. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Please keep in touch. We absolutely need you to volunteer with us. We need you to get engaged, change the narrative, and let's stop the 800% increase of women going into prison. Let's instead think about an 800% increase in strong, powerful women. Thank you and good night.